Hi there, everyone. It's Rob Ryder. Today, POW, protected persons, spies, or saboteurs, determining your status at a time of war on June 24th, 2019. And don't let anybody fool you, the United States is at war. We'll get into where the evidence is, and because of that, well, we need to choose our status. Because at this particular time, the civil governments of the United States, comprised of the co-equal branches of the nation and of the several states, have been suspended. There is no civil government. We're under military occupation. The United States is at war and is the occupying power where its gold fringed flag is displayed. And again, that's an army flag, right? So wherever you see that flag, like in a courtroom, well, that means the United States Army has been there. We'll just broaden it and we'll say, well, the United States Armed Forces have been there. And so that's occupied territory, occupied by the United States. So improve your status and be immune to domestic law and protected under the Geneva Convention and other treaties. So if you have the proper status at a time of war, well, you're immune to domestic law. You say, you got to take me to the post. And you'd be surprised how many people that would include other than just the people on active duty. So, the Department of Defense has the duty to enforce the Geneva Convention and all the other treaties and to do everything that needs to be done at a time of war because, well, basically, they're in charge. Right? The Department of Defense is in charge, and the Commander-in-Chief is above the Department of Defense. So we're not working under a president. If there is a president, well, he's working in his hat as the Commander-in-Chief because all the branches of the, let's say this, the Congress and the courts have been suspended. And I showed proof of that in my last video. So many things open. I want to get some of these closed real quick. So let's just start at the beginning. Go to the Department of Defense Office of General Counsel website, which is ogc.osd.mil. If you haven't done it already, get out a piece of paper and a pencil because I may give you some things that if you're going to participate, you're going to want to go look at. So on this website, at the bottom of the page, you can get the DoD Law of War Manual, June 2015, updated December 2016. And I know people have a problem with things called the law of war, but this is like an oxymoron, right? We are under war. There's no way you can change that. Well, if you're under war, we use different laws. And in those laws are meant to protect civilians or peaceful inhabitants, because the word civilian really doesn't mean anything in the Geneva Convention. Right? Well, you would think of as a civilian and not engaged in a war, they would call a protected person. You'll be protected under the Geneva Convention. But we need to use the proper terms and go to the proper place and get the proper document and the proper identification and so forth and so on. That's how it looks to me. So we're going to find out. And, I didn't say we're at war, although I did, but the House says we're at war. All right, the House of Representatives voted today to repeal the 2001 Authorization for Use of Military Forces. Presidents have used the AUMF to justify never-ending wars that lack congressional approval. This is the first time in nearly 18 years that the Chamber of Congress has repealed this law. All right, this just happened last week. And if you remember during Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings, Lindsey Graham was asking him if he understood about the laws of armed conflict compared to, the laws of armed conflict, and if they were in force right now, and were we engaged in a armed conflict, and so forth and so on. He affirmed all of that. So, okay, well then, when President Lincoln suspended habeas corpus in the District of Columbia, he collapsed the civil government in the District of Columbia, which is the nation's government. And these people aren't sitting in the government. They're not sitting in their offices. The people there are pretending to be there, but they're actually in the executive branch because they're taking an oath of office that comes out of an executive branch's U.S. code, Title V, administrative. Right? Title II is for Congress. I don't really know that there is one for the judiciary. Exactly. But there is a way for officers of the United States to be appointed and commissioned, and they're not doing that. So this video I'm doing now goes to the one I did just a few days ago, which is the DOD is the fourth estate, with the other three estates being the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. Well, the DOD is the fourth estate. And in a time of war, the fourth estate's in charge, and we're under international law, international public law, the law of war. Okay. Well, I showed this in the last video I did about the fourth estate, that back on January 17, 2019, after they had called for an adjournment for the day, the House of Representatives pretended that they were filing their oaths of office into the congressional record where they're supposed to be recorded. Well, this isn't the proper oath. This oath comes out of 5 U.S.C. 3331, which is the administrative U.S. Code, Title V. And it has a religious test as part of it. So it doesn't meet the criteria of the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution. And you don't have to say anymore. There's nothing else to prove. It doesn't do it because it says, so help me God. It's a wrong oath. And I've talked about all this in many videos before, so I'm going to leave it at that, other than to say that the proper oath to take, right, is found in 1 Stat, S-T-A-T 23, which is the first law passed by the first Congress after the ratification of the Constitution, which said this is the oath that satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution to support the Constitution. And the President's oath in Article 2 doesn't use the word support. So the President has to take 2 oaths. Well, guess what? Judges are supposed to take 2 oaths. But they run them together, right? And I showed all that in my last video. So these are all reasons why, well, the people there aren't really who they say they are. At least not in the office they're holding. So here's the House of Representatives saying they took these oaths of office, and they're using names with middle initials. They're using names with nicknames stuck in the middle, right? This isn't anybody's legal name. You can't take an oath of office and subscribe and say, well, this is the name of the individual holding the office, because this person doesn't exist. It's a thing. They're not using their full legal name. There's just no way around it. And then I showed these commissions that are supposed to be, we would think of them as federal judges, but it has the seal of the Department of Justice on it. So it doesn't have the U.S. seal that's used by Congress, cut by the Secretary of State. It's supposed to be put on all commissions after it's been signed by the President of the United States to change the appointment into a commission. Right? They may have been appointed, but they haven't been commissioned. Or they haven't been commissioned, but they haven't been appointed until the seal of the United States is on it. And this isn't the proper seal. And this guy's using a middle initial name. And so is Donald J. Trump. Well, he's not the President of the United States then, because he's not using his full legal name. And in the United States, they gave you a full legal name to use for official purposes with federal agencies. Well, this guy isn't using his proper name with a federal agency. So he's not a judge of the judiciary branch, but he very well could be a military commissioner under the executive branch, because we're under some kind of occupation. And I'll be showing why I think all those things are true here in just a second. And I want to talk about the flag real quick, because the gold fringe flag is an Army flag, and this is the Army Regulation 840-10. It talks about the flags, and I'm going to use it as my proof of whose flag it is, right? Because I want to say, hey, this is occupied territory. This is the United States Army is occupying the territory, and so whatever they say goes. And in Chapter 2, Flag of the United States, the flag of the United States is the symbol of our nation. It's good to know. Down in this part, which is actually all part of 2.3, sizes and occasions for display, national flags listed below are for outdoor display. And then we get over to national flags listed below are for indoor display and ceremonial uses and parades. For these purposes, the flag of the United States will be of rayon banner cloth or heavyweight nylon, trimmed on 3 sides with gold and yellow fringe, 2 1/2 inches wide. And then it goes on to say where it can be displayed in its 3-foot by 4-foot fly. And one of those is a military courtroom. Right? All these are military offices. There isn't any of them that are civilian. And so if you see a gold fringe flag, it means the Army has been there and, claims the territory. And as it turns out, all churches have got gold fringe flags in them. So if the United States is under this military government, then we need to go to the military if we have a bitch about what's going on, instead of going to these pretenders that really aren't holding the office in the first place. That's what I say. So that's what we're going to try. So hey, can you, you can donate, but will you? If you will, PayPal, please. RobRider@AOL.com. Or you can send it by mail to Robert Allen Rytlewski, 10955 14 Mile Road Northeast, Rockford, Michigan, 49341. Because believe it or not, I'm looking out for you and me and the we, right? Trying to do something for the common good. And unfortunately, that doesn't pay at all. Yeah, so help me out if you can. Okay, I want to load up a few things, I think, is what we're going to mainly be looking at then is this manual, which is the one that you'll download off of the website of the Department of Defense Office of General Counsel. And, it's 1,200 pages long, so we're not going to read the whole thing, thankfully. But we are going to skim it, and what. So I spent 8 years in the Army, and then 6 years working in a nuclear power plant, which is really under the military. It's the NRC, National Regulatory Commission. But the damn thing is run by mainly people that were in the Navy nukes. And so the thing about the military is if you show them something in a manual that says, well, this is what it says, you have a very good chance of convincing them that that is the right thing to do. So, not everybody knows these things are going on. And it isn't that they wouldn't do the right thing if they knew these things were going on. It's just no one's ever told them. Got to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm just done dealing with the people in the pretend courts as being the civil government. I may say, well, look, we're under, this military rule, so this is what you need to do because this is my status. And that's the main thing out of this book. If you didn't get anything first is, well, let's figure out what status we should have at a time of war. What do we do to get it so that it's acknowledged by the DOD that we have that status, and then we'll be protected. Forward, preface. It's all interesting things to read, but these videos get long in a hurry, so I just want to skim through the table of contents first. What's the general background? What are the principles? War is a legal concept, right? You want to figure out if you're at war? Well, read this first chapter. I say we are. I'm not going to read it. I just assume we are, and I'll go on. So application of the law of war. Well, if you're at war, then how do you apply it? Classes of persons. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Well, this would pertain to us. They have all sorts of classes of persons. The armed forces and the civilian population, lawful combatants and unprivileged belligerents, rights, duties, and liabilities of combatants, armed forces of a state, other militia and volunteer groups, rights, duties, and liabilities of civilians, military, medical, and religious personnel, rights, duties, and liabilities of military, medical, and religious personnel, authorized staff of voluntary aid societies, staff of recognized aid society of a neutral country, auxiliary military personnel. It goes on and on and on. Spies, saboteurs, and other persons engaging in similar acts behind enemy lines. Well, they define who all of these people are that they're talking about, and so we need to find the one that's best for us and say, well, what do I need to do to claim that status? Right? Private persons who engage in hostilities. Well, no, that's not me, so I don't want that one. But how did they get it in the first place? Rights, duties, and liabilities of unprivileged belligerents. No, that's not me. Now, they may be treating us as children and saying that we're being protected somehow, but they're going to have to prove it. But then we have the International ICRC, International Conference on Red Cross, International Commission on Red Cross, Committee on Red Cross, and other impartial humanitarian organizations determining the status of detainees in case of doubt. And so, before I forget, because we're going to go on, and I'm sure I'll tell you again, if you're ever in doubt, you just tell them you're claiming to be a POW. Not a political prisoner, not that you're claiming protection under the Geneva Convention. You're claiming to have the status of a POW, and you demand they contact the Department of Defense. Right? And then close your mouth. That's when you're there in the moment having to do it. I would rather have it all figured out ahead of time and never have to say that. Just give them a proper piece of identification and say, well, this is my identity. Is there a problem? Because they're the ones that are hiding their identity. We're not. The conduct of hostilities. Yeah, that stuff's happening. Weapons, wounded, detention, prisoners of war. Prisoner of war status, national level, GPW implementation measures. Hey, that'd be something to do with having an ID issue. Go back and actually look at these particular sections better, but this is what's happening. Civilians in the hands of a party to the conflict. Well, the United States is a party to the conflict. So you're in their hands, which means you're under the DOD. National level, Geneva Convention implementation measures. What's the DOD going to do to protect you? See, I'm going to be up here as a POW because I served in the military. And once you're in, you're always in. That may change if you're retired, because a guy told me he has a retired ID, which should be Geneva Convention compliant, but he says on his it shows his status as being a civilian. Where my brother-in-law, he got unemployability through the military, through the VA, so he's getting 100% disability rights, titles, and interest, and it shows that he's totally disabled, and his grade is E4, which is what he was when he got out of the Marines. It doesn't say he's a civilian. I'm trying to remember to show that to you. So these are just different classes, right? So you're either going to be a POW status, or you're going to be a civilian, but with protected person status. I think that'll talk about that down here. You'll start seeing where it talks about protected persons. And in that case, and if that's happening here in what we call the United States, then it's a military occupation. And this isn't hard to figure out. The Civil War, they had an armistice, which isn't a peace treaty. It's just a cessation in the hostilities, right? But it's not a peace treaty, and a peace treaty's never been signed. And because Lincoln declared martial law in the District of Columbia, then the president, as being over the District of Columbia, has to issue a proclamation to end the martial law, or the territory that is the United States is under martial law. And then that just fits in so well with what they did is they have this border around the 10-mile square. And on one side of the stone it says jurisdiction United States, territory United States, jurisdiction United States, whatever it might be. On the other side it has jurisdiction of whatever state it was. Well, now they're all Maryland because the ones in Virginia, right, they gave that property back and they breached the wall in the United States with a waterway that leads out to the ocean. And then we don't have a southern border because they'll never define where it is. They don't want them ever to put up a southern border. So, how far does the United States from the District of Columbia reach? It can reach the entire globe. But it can certainly reach the continental United States, which it claims to be its territory. Well, that's where I am. I'm in the United States, and so in the United States, we should have a particular status. Excuse me. Air, law of neutrality, cyber operations, non-eternal armed conflict, non-international armed conflict. Well, that would be domestic. All right? This is what's happening here. We're under some kind of domestic armed conflict because the war on terror is worldwide. Right? Well, acts of terror are done domestically. Implementation and enforcement of the law of war. Might have some good stuff in there to read. Document appendix, note on treaties and other relevant documents. So these are all the treaties and so forth that are in the custody of the guy. I already knocked them out. Office of Attorney of General Counsel, Department of Defense. Him. He's acting like the Secretary of State because he's in custody of all the damn treaties. Well, that's what the Secretary of State's supposed to do. Right? But he's the custodian for all the treaty documents that pertain to the Department of Defense. So the courts that we see and the things that we see working that say that they're United States of America, not the United States of America with a T capitalized or just United States, but United States of America, that's all King George's stuff. Under the Treaty of Peace of 1783, he claimed the United States of America as his territory, and it's never been argued, and so that is his. Right? And it's sharing the same territory as the United States of America, which is the republics that were created under the Articles of Confederation, and says in the first article that the style of Confederacy shall be the United States of America. Well, that's what they use on money, the United States of America, and on passports they use United States of America. All right, there are these two venues sharing the same territory, and in one venue you have a really shitty status, in the other venue you would be self-governing. So they have us in the wrong status, and the way we prove our status to the United States, which is at war, is to go to its military and get them to agree that you're an American national. And so now you're protected as an inhabitant of the occupied territory. Yeah, here's all the different treaties, right? So, for me, I'm not running from this. I'm running towards it. Say, hey, this is all good. How am I going to use this to my advantage? Because I'm just going to point out the thing that I see as, my ticket, and take it to the DOD and say, well, according to your Law of War Manual, Section 19.1, introduction. I picked a bad one, so I'd have to pick better. But in here, there it is, Roerich Peace Pact. Right? Under the Roerich Peace Pact, if you're a member of a historical society or a library or a cultural institution or something like that, you are supposed to be protected by the military. That's why it's in here. Now, when I read about this, because you can go, click on this and take you right to it. It says it's been combined into this Hague Cultural Property Convention, and they're not using the same symbol as they used under the Roerich Peace Pact. They're going to use a different symbol, but all of these are meant to protect the non-belligerents. And so that's how it rolls. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to pull a few up for us to read. So hang on a second here. I wanted to show why, the several states have the same defect, right? So that the people aren't who they say they are. They're not the governments. They don't take an oath of office that conforms to the Constitution of the state that says, here's the oath to take. Says exactly what to take. That isn't the oath they're taking. Well, then they didn't take the oath in the Constitution. Right? And they don't use their full legal name on their oath of office, just like they don't in the national level. So I don't have to accept it. When I did my oath of enlistment, it was in my full legal name. And, I'm not bowing to somebody that didn't take an oath in their full legal name. So if you look at both of these, here's a ticket. This is if in Michigan, if you got a ticket, it's called the State of Michigan Uniform Law Citation. And it will probably eventually create a thing called the State of Michigan Notice to Appear. But you see it says State of Michigan. Now, if you go and look at the IDs that you get from Michigan, they just say Michigan on it. It doesn't say State of Michigan. Because Michigan is the name of the state. Right? It may be a capital S state of Michigan as in an organized state called Michigan, but that isn't the title. Right? That's two proper nouns coupled with an of. Where this, on these tickets, where the hell is that thing? There it is. On this ticket, this is the title of the entity called State of Michigan. Well, that is not the government. The government is Michigan. And so, this paperwork is all bogus. It's a simulated legal process done under color of law in the territory that's being occupied by the United States and military occupation. So we need to go talk to the military of the United States about this entity called the State of Michigan and say, I don't know who they are, but they're not the sovereign state of Michigan. And so this is the improper venue to be in, right? This is where we're at now, State of Michigan. We don't want to be here. We want to be, myself, a peaceful inhabitant of Michigan, recognized by the nation's Department of Defense, and I'm recognized because I have an ID card that they agree with to show my that I'm a United States national, or an American national, I guess is better, an American national status, and I'm not the belligerent. So that's out of the way. That's out of the way. Here's another site you may want to write down, Executive Service Directorate, which is www.esd.whs.mil. ESDWHSMIL. And they have these things there, right, which are called directives, which this is all out of the Department of Defense. Well, some of those directives, so you can find these by searching on, putting in different search terms. And I had put in for, what wasn't I put in for? ID cards, right? ID cards required by Geneva Convention. ID cards required by Geneva Convention, right? They wrote an instruction for it. It says this instruction goes with another instruction, which is, this is where you have to read these things. Actually say, okay, this is what it said. You need to go look at this. Here we go, Volume 1 of DoD Manual 1000.13. And so they talk about these IDs. Identification cards required by the Geneva Convention. Well, if you're in an occupied territory at a time of war and you're trying to claim authority or protection on the Geneva Convention, it would help if you had their ID card. And as it turns out, they have a duty to give you one. Right? That's what these manuals are talking about. I don't know if it was this one or the next one. Let me see. We'll read closer in a minute, but or we won't. I'll just read it in this. This is section 4 of that class of persons out of the larger manual. But I wanted to get to the one about where are you? This is what it says in 10. And 10 was civilians in the hands of a party to a conflict. What is it? 1031. Okay, 1031. Make sure you got it from the same place. Yep, national accounting for protected persons and its powers. So if you download this big manual, you put it right on there and click on it, and take you right to the page. But you can't highlight it on that one. It's copyright protected or whatever, but you can copy it and do it. So I did it this way, and it says a proper accounting of the detention or assigned residence of protected persons. Now, one of the things they always ask you for is, what is your permanent address? It's because that's the assigned residence of your protected person. A state must obtain detailed information about certain protected persons in its power for forwarding through the National Protection Person Information Bureau to the Central Information Agency for Protected Persons. Which means they're supposed to have set up some place where you're supposed to register at a national level to be accounted for as a protected person. Now, what state are they talking about? This is the United States, right? The thing that's at war that planted the flag. Not the state of Michigan, Georgia, Illinois. No, the United States. Accountability information. Each of the parties to the conflict. Well, again, we know one of them's the United States because its flag is planted in the courtroom, so they're a party. Within the shortest possible time, give its National Protected Person Information Bureau information on any measure taken by it concerning any protected person who are kept in custody for more than 2 weeks, subject to be assigned residence, subjected to assigned residence, or interned. And what do they want to have? Your surname and your first name, right? First and middle names, no initials. Place of birth, nationality, last residence. They're going to put your nationality on here. Somebody is going to tell you what your nationality is. Because right now, they won't tell you that you're an American national. You don't have any paperwork anywhere that says you're an American national. And they don't ever use your full legal name, so they don't want you to show up in the United States and be an American national. Because you'd be protected by this stuff. Instead, you're in the United States of America as somebody's bondservant or, pauper. You don't have any rights. Any distinguished characteristics: first name of the father, maiden name of the mother, date, place, nature. Yeah, so again, this is out of section 1031. You can read it yourself. But somebody is supposed to have gathered all this information on you if you're a protected person, right? Have you given it to anybody yet? I guess they made a mistake. They forgot to get a hold of you. So, my plan is really this simple. I'm going to copy and paste this section here into the DoD's Freedom of Information Act page and say, who is the National Protected Person Bureau? talked about in this section of the Law of War manual, and see if they'll answer me. So, each National Protected Person Information Bureau shall immediately forward information concerning protected persons by the most rapid means to the powers of whom these persons are nationals. Well, that would be the United States if you're a United States national. I'm not a national of Michigan. No, I'm a national of the United States. The United States is the nation. Michigan is supposed to be a republic. Right? But it wants to be its own nation state. So now we have 50 nation states that are warring with the one nation under God. Or their civil governments have been abandoned and somebody has just assumed that they're going to be in charge and is impersonating officers of the state by falsely creating oaths of office using a fictitious name. That's what spies do. Replying to inquiries regarding protected persons. The National Protected Persons Information Bureau, where is that at? Shall also reply to all inquiries that may be received regarding protected persons. Hey, let's go down and read the footnote. See, these are all out of the Geneva Convention. They're just using the words, right? Every nation has to decide how they're going to do it, but these are the laws of war. This stuff has to have been done. And we need to find it and get our name in a book. Now, as I was doodling around, I said, hey, they had this thing called a no-fee passport. And it looks like it has, the same information on it that it was just talking about that they're supposed to have under the protected powers section. It's like, and there's no fee for it. It's like, duh. Well, I wonder how you get this. And so this is DD form 1056. Right? I'm going to try it just to see what happens. But it's a one-page form. Right? Forget the thing they use for the passports now. That's in United States of America. Hopefully this is the one for the United States because it's through the Department of Defense, which is at war. Or the United States is at war, being run under a military government. Well, then the DOD is in charge. Because it says in its directives, function of the Department of Defense and its major components. Well, why do they exist? Let's find out. Function of the Department of Defense. As prescribed by higher authority, the Department of Defense shall maintain and use armed forces to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, if you're going to go talk to the Department of Defense, you really don't have to go any farther. That's why you're there, because you need them to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against domestic enemies. Then it talks about the Office of the IG for the DOD, right? And did a little looking on the IG, and, well, he has power under the Inspector General Act, right? Inspector General's Act of 1978. Inspector General may be authorized by the Attorney General to carry a firearm while engaged in official duties, as authorized under this Act and other statutes, especially authorized by the Attorney General. Make an arrest without warrant while engaged in official duties, as authorized under this Act. Seek and execute warrants for arrest, search of premises, and seizures of evidence issued under the authority of the United States upon probable cause to believe that a violation has been committed. Well, if somebody won't give you this ID they're talking about, the Inspector General needs to have them arrested because it's the duty of the Department of Defense to give you the damn thing. Okay. In Section 4, then it had all these different classes of persons. And I don't know, I want to read the whole thing because it just takes forever with this stuff to read, but you're getting the idea of it, I hope, that protected persons. What they call them in here are protected persons, right? That combatants may make enemy combatants on the military objectives the object of their attack, but may not make civilian population and other protected persons an object of their attack. Right? So they can't make you an object of their attack. You need to say, I'm protected. Combatants, POW status. Combatants are liable to capture and detention by enemy combatants, but are entitled to POW status when they fall into the power of the enemy during international armed conflict. POWs will, like all detained individuals, must be treated humanely. And it goes on about the special status that a POW has. In general, combatants retain their right to POW status and treatment even if they are alleged to have committed crimes before capture. For example, POWs are entitled to a variety of rights in relation to judicial proceedings against them. Combatants captured while engaged in spying or sabotage forfeit their entitlement to POW status. So you don't want to be a spy or a saboteur. In cases of doubt as to whether a detainee is entitled to POW status, that person should be afforded the protections of POW status until their status has been determined by a competent tribunal. Combatants. Right? Now I'm saying I'm a combatant. I'm a veteran. I've taken an oath of enlistment that made me so I'm no longer a civilian, and it doesn't say how you go back to being a civilian. So I'm a combatant. Combatants are legally immune from foreign states' domestic law. Well, I'm not in the state of Michigan. That isn't a state of the Union. Michigan is a state of the Union. So if the state of Michigan wants to claim to be a sovereign entity, well, then it's a foreign state to me. It has nothing to do with me, and I'm not subject to its domestic law. Basically, they have to take me to the military under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Combatants lack legal immunity from an enemy state's domestic law for acts that are prohibited by a law of war. Also, combatants lack legal immunity from an enemy state's domestic law while engaged in spying or sabotaging. Well, then don't do it. Combatants' legal immunity and POW status. Combatants' privilege from liability under domestic laws has been associated with POW status. Right? That's why you don't say you're a political prisoner if you're going to claim protection under the Geneva Convention. You're either a combatant and you're claiming to be a POW, or you're not a combatant and you're claiming to be a protected person. In that vein, U.S. courts have inferred the provisions GPW, the combatant's privileges against being prosecuted by capturing states. So if you get pulled over on the side of the road by a state of Michigan, well, you were just captured by a foreign state or somebody pretending to be the government. The armed force of the state may include a variety of components such as militia, volunteer groups that form parts of the armed forces. And in this would be the Red Cross. That if you're a member of the Red Cross during a time of war, then you're considered to be governed by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which means you're not subject to the foreign domestic laws of state of Michigan. State of. Members who are ministers of religion without having officiated as chaplains to their own forces. You could tell them you're a chaplain. Well, you don't tell them you're a chaplain. You tell them you're a minister. A deserter is still considered a POW unless he's captured by his own forces. But if you're in the hands of the state of Michigan, well, then you tell him you're a POW. States may not compel POWs, retain persons, or protect persons in their power to defect and serve in their armed forces. Yeah. You know what? I think I did do that. Let me go look at this. So these particular sections I just took out of that section 4 because it's just too hard to go through and remember all these things are. But in 417, it talks about spies. So who's a spy? A person may only be considered a spy when acting clandestinely or under false pretenses in a zone of operations of a belligerent, he or she obtains or endeavors to obtain information with the intention of communicating it to the hostile party. Well, shit. They're just talking about that ticket. Where'd that ticket go? That's what this is. This ticket meets all the criteria of being the work of a spy. Simply because at the bottom of the page, it's cut off. It doesn't have the guy's full legal name on it. He didn't use his first name, middle name, last name. And he doesn't have a MCOLS certificate, which is a Michigan Commission on licensing of MCOLS, MCO, Michigan Commission on licensing of law enforcement officers. How would that all worked out? Anyways, but this is the state of Michigan, right? So if we look at what it just said, well, then he's acting clandestinely because he didn't use his proper name. He's pretending to be a law enforcement officer because he doesn't have a proper oath of office in his full legal name, doesn't have a commission from the body that commissions law enforcement officers. He is operating in a zone that's claimed by the belligerent United States, because the United States is a belligerent, right? It's one of the entities that's involved in the war. They're going to obtain information from you, you give them your state ID, Michigan ID, not state of Michigan ID, right? With the intention of communicating it to a hostile party. They're going to take your Michigan information and give it to the state of Michigan. Well, that's a spy. But hey, that's not all. Rights, duties, and liabilities of civilians. The Geneva Convention uses the term protected persons to refer to persons protected by the convention. Well, that's simple enough. I'm not a civilian. I'm a protected person. General usage of civilian in this manual. This manual generally uses civilian to mean a member of the civilian population, a person who is neither part nor associated with an armed force group or otherwise engaging in hostilities. But if you're a member of an aid society, then you're not a civilian. You're a protected person under the Geneva Convention. Right? Anybody who's in the Red Cross should get a ID that has the information they've already talked about on there with a big-ass Red Cross on it. Right? That's your passport. Military, medical, and religious personnel. That's what we're talking about now. Rights, duties of medical and religious personnel. Authorized staff of voluntary aid societies. So states may choose to employ the staff of National Red Cross societies and that of other voluntary aid societies like military, medical, and religious personnel. If the states subject such staff to military law and regulations, then such personnel are to be treated like military, medical, and religious personnel. States must notify other parties to the 1949 Geneva Conventions before actually employing such personnel. American National Red Cross, under U.S. law, the American National Red Cross, not with the capitalized, but American National Red Cross, is a voluntary aid society authorized to support the U.S. Armed Forces in a time of war. American National Red Cross personnel who support the U.S. Armed Forces in military operations in this way are subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Right? That's your venue. So, right, the civilian law wouldn't be your venue. No, I'm under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You got to take me to the post. Take me to my commander. Persons engaged in duties related to protection of cultural property. Persons responsible for duties of control in accordance with regulations of this execution 1949 or 54 Hague Convention, Property Convention, Hague Cultural Property Convention, and persons engaged in duties of the protection of cultural property are to carry a special identity card bearing the distinctive emblem. But it's no longer the Roerich Peace Pack emblem. It's the one that it was combined with in the 1954 Hague Cultural Property Convention, which I haven't gone to look at yet to see what theirs is. But you're supposed to have an ID card. Right? So we're supposed to have this national level ID card of one kind or another. Either you're a combatant, or you're a protected person, or you're protected under the Geneva Convention because you're in the Red Cross. But all of these have some way that you're supposed to have been registered. And we're not registered on a national level for an ID card that is Geneva Convention compliant. Spies, saboteurs, and others. Well, I'm saying that's them. Right? Acting clandestinely, not using their full legal name. Right? What does that mean? It means deliberately concealing or misrepresenting one's identity. Right? It's in the fucking law. So I should be able to point that out to somebody and say, well, according to this, you'd be acting clandestinely. And there's a gold fringe flag, so you'd be operating in the venue of a belligerent, United States. And you're obtaining information from me, whether it's on the side of the road or in the courtroom or whatever. Somebody's getting information from me. And they call that war treason. Cases in doubt during international armed conflict. Should there be any doubt as to whether persons suspected of committing a belligerent act or having fallen into the hands of the enemy are entitled to POW status, such persons are entitled to have their status determined by a competent tribunal, which means 3 people, not 1, competent tribunal, and should be treated as POWs pending that determination. You would have to tell them you're claiming POW status, not political prisoner status, not protection under the Geneva Convention, because the Geneva Convention covers private persons who engage in hostilities, right? Or all sorts of things. Well, they don't have the same rights as people that are POWs. So tell them you're a POW, prisoner of war. And basically anybody that's under the UCMJ, for whatever reason, would, and if you're captured, well, you're a POW. And so if you're under the UCMJ, you're not, you have legal immunity to the domestic law of the foreign entity that's trying to enforce their law on you. Private persons who engage in hostilities, right? So if you say you're a civilian, well, civilians can be engaged in hostilities. So you don't want to be just a civilian. You want to say you're a protected person, because that's the word they used in the Geneva Convention. Right? Rights, duties, and liabilities of unprivileged belligerents. There are belligerents that are privileged, like the United States and its armed forces, and there's belligerents that are unprivileged, which are like citizens that do acts of terror and get caught at it. They don't have any privileges. Police as civilians in general, members of law enforcement agencies have civilian status. Furthermore, routine domestic law enforcement is part of the general protection of the civilian population and does not constitute taking a direct action on hostilities that would deprive police officers of their protection from being made an object of the attack. Unfortunately, they're not the police because they didn't take a proper oath of office. They're pretending to be the police, right? The government is not your enemy, and the government isn't doing anything to you at all. It's being done by people who are pretending to be the government and have usurped the power of the government and need to be kicked out of their, out of the office. Put them in a FEMA camp until they learn better. When everybody calms down, well, let's all live in peace. But until then, somebody needs to be the peacemaker. And the way to make the peace is get the DOD to enforce the Geneva Convention. Determining the status of detainees in cases of doubt. This is 427. Okay, so 426 was the ICRC. That's the International Commission of the Red Cross and other impartial humanitarian organizations. Specific status of the ICRC. Which, under the ICRC, is the American National Red Cross, with the T capitalized. But American National Red Cross, without the T capitalized, is a totally different entity. And thinking about this now, they have this big-ass building that's in D.C., and it's so big, it's, a block big. So on 17th Street has an entrance, and 18th Street has an entrance. And I believe that they're two different entities. That one is American National Red Cross, and the other one is the American National Red Cross. Well, the American National Red Cross isn't properly constituted by the Act of Congress that was supposed to have created it. But American National Red Cross is the big brother of the thing Clara Barton started as a private individual, and it is considered under these laws to be the entity that represents the U.S. Armed Forces. Excuse me. That its people are protected by the Geneva Convention. And here's that accountability information that parties to a conflict should collect. They're supposed to get this information from us and put it into a National Protected Person Information Bureau. So let's just Google that real quick since we're all here. Does the United States claim to have one? Oh, hang on here. Department of Defense Office of Inspector General. Right? You can put in a complaint to these people about what's happening to you. That they're not enforcing the Geneva Convention. You're claiming to be a POW. Here's my information. The National... Okay, got the National Crime Information Center. That don't sound quite right. The National Information Bureau in aid of victims of armed conflicts. Now, where is that at? Cambridge.org. That was only from 1961 to 1977. So, take this section, this is the plan, right? Take that section and go ask the Department of Defense, well, where is our National Protected Person Information Bureau? I want to talk to them. Very cool. So that's kind of the idea, is to go ask the DOD some questions and then But in the meantime, because I've had a number of things that I could put into court cases, I've filed something. We'll see what happens. And give me a second. I'll load it up and we'll talk about that. Hang on. All right. So what I'm trying to do is I had gotten this ticket back in March. In fact, I did a couple of videos on this. Excuse me. They would have been called, what do I call it? Ticket to Ride, plate with no name, and I own City of Greenville, which were my attempts at the time when I first got this ticket to deal with this situation, through those people. The ones that did it and the ones that told me to go to their court in the state of Michigan on a uniform law citation, where it said that, I gave my driver's license number there, but I don't have a driver's license. I have a state ID card. I have one of these. Right here. Michigan identification card. And it has a number up here, which is the number they put on there. But it doesn't say it's a driver's license number. It's just a number. Now, it's funny because here's a driver's license. It's got the number in the same place. It doesn't say it's a driver's license number either. Right? So, but mine doesn't say it's a driver's license. Mine's my identification card. And so they took my identification card number and they put it on that ticket saying that it was my driver's license number. And it went on to say that I had violated some local ordinances, right? It didn't say I violated a state law or an administrative rule, but some local ordinance. But I didn't list what the ordinance was. Right? What's the ordinance number? Where is Ordinance 8271 and 8277 in the city of Greenville where this is supposed to have happened? They don't exist. And it went down to say that I had to appear, right, on or before the 14th, like 10 days. It was on the 4th I got it. So within 10 days, I got to appear. But it doesn't say where to appear. And then below, it gives this court address for 64B District Court, Montcalm CO, whatever the hell that is, some address and so forth. A guy named Steve DeWitt, right? That's the guy's name, and that's his signature. Well, that isn't anybody's name, full legal name of an American national in the United States. I say it isn't. You're going to have to prove to me that's the name on your driver's license. So I had done all sorts of things waiting to see what would happen, and eventually this is what happened. I got in the mail some citations, or failure to answers, right? So it said that I failed to answer. Now again, this is the state of Michigan saying this, where my ID says it's Michigan. It doesn't say state of Michigan. But it says Michigan, but, right? Because the ticket said state of Michigan, well, now the state of Michigan is saying I failed to appear. And it's using my ID number as a license number. That information looked okay. Violation: drove while unlicensed or license not valid. But it doesn't have any number to it. I mean, what ordinance is that? What's the ordinance number? I've not been properly informed of the nature and cause of the violation. Then it went on to say the court listed below notified the Department of State of your failure to answer a citation or to comply with a court judgment as ordered. Your Michigan operator's or chauffeur's license or ORV snowmobile operating privileges be suspended and remain suspended until all matters relating to this violation are resolved. You are required to surrender your Michigan operator or chauffeur license immediately. Please mail Michigan license to Michigan Department of State, Lansing, Michigan. I don't have one. Can't do it. But it said this court below. So now this is the name of the court I'm supposed to go to, which isn't the name of the court I was told to go to on the ticket. Right, this one says 64B District Court, Montcalm CO. This one just says 64B District Court. 617N State Street, right? 617N State RD. This one says ST, Staten, Michigan 48888. That looks okay, I guess, although this one doesn't have a comma. The other one did have a comma. I don't know. But they're using different phone numbers, 7450 compared to 7421. And so one of these, I think it's this number here, when you put it into Dun & Bradstreet, it comes up that this is the name of a business. Right? It's listed as a business. It's not listed as a court. It's a business. So that's what happened with all that. So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to, instead of arguing with these people anymore, I'm going to open a case in the federal court, which I did by submitting a petition that went back and forth with a couple of things, and we're only on like the 8th entry, so that's not very many as far as federal cases go, and I finally got them to do something, which they issued an order to show cause, right? That I need to show cause, which is okay. Now, I think the reason this happened is because I wrote to the chief judge and was bitching to him, and I'm not going to go on all the different pieces of paper. I'll do it soon, but I'm just showing this is what I'm trying to do now based on the ticket I got from a place that doesn't exist and knowing what I know now because of reading the Law of War manual. And so in there, this was a order to show cause from Honorable Paul L. Maloney. Robert Allen Rutluski is the petitioner. State of Michigan et al. Is a respondent. Well, the state of Michigan is not the sovereign state of Michigan. So petitioner filed an action seeking declaratory judgment. The petitioner filed his application to proceed without prepayment. Although I really didn't use their form, their pauper form, I just put in the thing I had used in other cases I had put into the Veterans Court, which I explained in the videos I had to do with that. But for today, is so ordered that petitioner shall show cause in writing within 10 calendar days of the date of this order why his case should not be dismissed for want of prosecution. Failure to comply with this order may result in dismissal of the case for want of prosecution. It is so ordered by Paul L. Maloney. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to answer his order to show cause by giving him what he asked for, which is written show cause of petitioner. He wanted me to put in writing and show cause why my complaint shouldn't be dismissed for lack of prosecution. Not because I didn't have a case, but because it wasn't being prosecuted. And they want you to fill out that pauper paperwork and give up your status. And I didn't want to do that. I said, no, I'm doing this whole thing as what they're doing is unconstitutional. And I was trying to petition the government for redress of grievances. And so I don't need to pay to do that. It was all, things that I was thinking as I did it and things I talked about in videos of where I got it from and I was putting it all into work. Well, now I'm going to try this. So I just filed this. In fact, it's in the mail today. Hopefully I'll have it tomorrow. The United States is at war. So this is my answer to his order to show cause. Honorable Paul L. Maloney wanted an answer. I'm going to give him one. The United States is at war, and I, Robert Allen Rutluski, am a combatant of the United States, subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, with legal immunity from domestic law, and the earned status of POW if captured or detained. My DOD ID number is 1211280006. See attached verification? Should be from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I am being detained against my will. Right? Because they wrote these damn pieces of paper and say I have to answer. So I'm detained. Right? You don't have to be in jail to be detained. You're detained once they frickin' say you're detained. They're restricting my liberties. So if Paul L. Maloney has any doubt that the United States is at war, or of my status, I order him to contact the Department of Defense General Counsel for legal interpretation from the Department of Defense of the current state of affairs of the United States and the verification of my status. State of Michigan et al. Is not recognized by the United States. Michigan is the state of the Union, not state of Michigan. Michigan is the name found on a real ID compliant identification, not state of Michigan. State of Michigan et al. Is a criminal organization whose members engage in spying and sabotage in the United States, acting clandestinely or falsely or under false pretenses, deliberately concealing or misrepresenting identity and conduct. Hey, I took that right out of the frickin' manual on the laws of war. State of Michigan et al. Members impersonate officers having authority under the Constitution of the United States because they really don't have any. Conceal their identity. They don't use their full legal name. Simulate legal processes. Well, if you don't have any authority and you're pretending to be a policeman, well, that's a simulated legal process. And engage in war treason. I like that term because it came out of the manual on the law of war. None have valid commission or oath of office delegating authority under the United States. Paul L. Maloney, United States District Judge, if he really is not a member of the judiciary of the judicial branch of the United States. Paul L. Maloney is at best an executive branch officer arbitrating matters under Title V of the United States Code, or as a military commissioner, but he has no constitutional authority under the United States as a civil officer of the judicial branch. Right? The judicial branch is a co-equal branch of government. It's supposed to have its own people. So why is he being, as I showed earlier with the commissions that they give these alleged district judges, they come from the Department of Justice, which is in the executive branch. Right? They don't come with the seal of the United States on it. It comes with a seal of the judicial branch, or of the Department of Justice. So the commission for his office does not have the seal of the United States. Instead, it has the seal of the Department of Justice, which is an executive branch agency of the United States, not the United States. Paul L. Maloney is not a competent tribunal to judge my status, but he very well could have the authority to arrest the belligerents committing war treason in the District of the United States under his watch and provide my relief. Paul L. Maloney and his chain of command should refresh themselves on the Department of Defense Law of War Manual, in particular classes of persons, a copy of which can be downloaded from the Department of Defense Office of General Counsel. I claim I am being detained. Invoke the status of POW and demand relief from belligerents acting clandestinely or under false pretenses, deliberately concealing or misrepresenting identity and conduct in the United States in offense of the Department of Defense Law of War Manual. Paul L. Maloney will see to my relief and arrest spies and saboteurs. I will alert the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General of his failure to do his duty to God and country, and seek his arrest and confinement in a FEMA camp while he awaits a guilty verdict from a military tribunal and then the execution of his sentence. So help him God. Paul L. Maloney, take me to my commander if I violated the UCMJ, or do your duty. I certify under penalty of perjury. The foregoing is true and correct. Executed 6/23/2019. Hey, I just put that in the mail, and if it goes in, it'll be the next entry into case 1:19 CV 00385, which is in the United States District Court, Western District of Michigan. Let's see what they have to say to that. They've been pretty good about putting things into the court that I've sent to the court. Not necessarily things I sent directly to the chief judge, but this is all a learning process. I said, I can send paper, and I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to tell them I'm filing a petition. I ain't paying for it. The United States is the plaintiff. I'm pointing out crimes, da-da-da-da-da, all these things I could think of. Well, now that I've read this manual, okay, we're at war. I'm going to use these sets of facts as the reason. And if they won't do the right thing, well, I'll turn Honorable Paul L. Maloney into the Department of Defense's Office of Inspector General and see if he can come out and arrest him. Because Paul L. Maloney is not an officer of the judicial branch. He's an officer, if he is an officer, of the executive branch. And so he's not an Article 3 judge. He may be tasked with enforcing the Constitution because, they can say that's your duty. Do it, that's your duty, Judge, enforce the Constitution. But he's not doing it. Or if he won't do it, well, then he can be arrested for it. Right? It isn't like putting in for judicial defect or whatever, right? Doing it through the courts. None of that shit's there. They don't exist. He is an executive branch officer who took an oath of office where they combined two oaths together, actually merged them together, so they're no longer the two separate oaths he needed to take. It's a thing they made up to do instead. So he hasn't taken either oath. And the oath say, so help me God, and that doesn't satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution. So obviously the offices under the Constitution have been suspended. And it goes back to Lincoln declaring martial law in the District of Columbia, which is the United States. And until that's changed under a proclamation according to the Lieber Code, Article 2 of the Lieber Code, proclamation or special mention of a peace treaty, we're still under martial law, which means martial government. And it's manifested today in what we see around us today where the gold fringe flags are. And it's all tied to the fact that we need to get a proper status agreed to by the Department of Defense. Right? You a POW? You a protected person? You a spy or saboteur? Well, get it figured out and get them to agree. So we need to figure out where these protected persons are supposed to be registered at, and that'll be what I'm doing this afternoon, sending them to the FOIA officer of the Department of Defense. Freedom of Information. Where is the office I'm supposed to go to as a protected person to register? So, okay, I'm going to leave it there. You all have a great day, and if you can, please do donate. I could really use it. I can't pay my rent. I can't even go buy groceries. I am as broke as I can be until you help me out. I'm counting on you. Thank you. Y'all have a great day. God bless.